Good morning, Rotarians and guests. Welcome to Hudson Rotary. My name is Ron Strobel. I'm the Sergeant at Arms. Our invocation this morning is by Jim Ahern.
We are thankful for this day that you have given us, for its blessings, its opportunities, and its challenges. May we appreciate and use each day that comes to us. We pray for strength and guidance for each day as it comes, for each day's duties, for each day's problems. May we be challenged to give our best always, and may we be assured of your presence within us. Amen.
Amen. Thanks, Jim. And now to lead us in the pledge and the four-way test, Allison Feaster.
Ready? I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Four-way test. First, is
true.
Second,
Is fair to all concerned.
Third,
Will build goodwill and better friendships.
Fourth,
Will be beneficial to all concerned.
She went a whole year as president without having to do that, so it was, she had to relearn it. To lead us in song, Dick Pearsall.
You might have guessed what we're going to sing. There it is, America the Beautiful. And it is a beautiful land, and we should never forget that. Oh, beautiful for spacious skies, for amber waves of rain, for purple mountains majesty, above the fruited plain. Give it a kick. America, America, God shed His rays on me. Someone reverently. And round I stood with brotherhood, from sea to shining sea. Good Americans. Good.
Thank you, Dick. And now our president, Joe Avella.
Thank you, Ron. Okay, and good morning, Rotarians and guests. To start us off, I'd like to call upon our secretary, Chris Barker, to introduce some guests.
Good morning, Rotarians and guests. We have two guests joining us today, and if they would please stand so we could greet them, if they'd stand when I call their name. First, we have Bella Morelli from the Hudson Service Learning Group, and thank you for helping us on the AV today. And then we have Mimi Becker. She is a guest of Peter Goheen, and thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Chris. So we had a great weekend. It was a great Art on the Green. I'll tell you, I was there Saturday morning, Saturday afternoon. Hudson was a busy, busy place with the farmers market, the Art on the Green, the flea market, just people walking their dogs or running or getting coffee. It was a busy place. Want to call up Bob and give us a wrap-up on that event.
Good morning, and good to see you again. It was a good weekend. We had good results, and served a lot of brats and dogs. Want to thank, first of all, everybody who was involved and participated in or volunteered with the Art on the Green and our hot dog brat stand. Saturday was a really busy day. If you were there on Sunday, you noticed, well, it rained in the morning, and so it kept the crowd down. But the results overall were good. The total revenue was $2,251. And on Saturday, breaking it down in round numbers, we brought in $1,400. On Sunday, we brought in $800. And so the rain really did impact us. I was just thinking what would have happened had we been able to have 2 days in a row like Saturday. But the profit from that, after we do have to pay bills, and our treasurer subtracted a few things from our the expenses, but the total profit from the weekend was $1,502. Wow. That's last year was around $1,200, so that's up a little over last year. Only a couple of specifics. There were a lot of people who participated in doing special things. Just like to point them out. Tom Tobin brought the grill. Tom Page brought the tables, and they delivered them, so I didn't have to go get them. That's always nice. And they also helped set up the tent and things like that on Friday afternoon, along with Ed Sogan. 4 people worked double shift because we ran into some, didn't have the whole schedule filled. Pete Coheen would work double shift. Donna Kastner worked a double shift. And when she works, she really works. And Catherine and Bob Sines they showed up a little early, about an hour before they were supposed to. And they said, "How's everything going?" I said, "Not too good. We only had about 3 people there." And so they came in and picked up on the extra help that we needed right at that time. So thank those people for being involved, extra involved. The only thing we have left over are some hot dogs. And I returned things to Acme, but they don't take this back. So I took these home and put them in the freezer. With Labor Day weekend coming up, maybe there's somebody's going to have a picnic and would like to buy. I think we always ask for somebody to purchase these. And there's 4 packages like this. That's all we ended up with. We ran out of brats, and we returned a couple of cartons of Coke and Pepsi and water. And so this is it. This rounds out the weekend. So if anybody would like these, I have 4 of them here. I don't know how much. $2 each. So I think it retails at about $4. We paid $3, and you can have them for $2. So I'll have this. They're frozen, so you can get them home without any problem and prepare them for next Monday on the Labor Day weekend. Okay, thank you.
I was there off and on during the weekend. Bob and Sue Cramp were there all the time. So talk about dedication. They were there both days, full days. And we had over 30 Rotarians, spouses, relatives, and friends helping us with that event. So that's quite an accomplishment, and I think we ought to give Bob and Sue another round of applause. Okay, this weekend, Taste of Hudson. Where's Ed?
First of all, on Friday night, 7 o'clock will be the first home football game. If you are going to attend, come early. It should be a packed crowd. It's going to be toasty, so hydrate before you go to the game, just like the players have to. If you are in need of a senior pass, stop at HCR and pick that up prior to the game. Again, the lines will be long. They do have pre-sale for adults and students, so if you have kids or grandkids that are going to go, it might be a good idea to stop up at the high school. I think they start selling those at around noon on Thursday and Friday. Big game against Strongsville again on Friday at 7 o'clock. I went out to Austintown Fitch thinking it was a 7 o'clock start. Got there a quarter after 6. The game was at 7:30. Had a great time watching the warm-up, and I was exhausted by the time the game started. Taste of Hudson. The volunteer area is in the same location again. It's next to UBS, kind of in between UBS and Talbot's. And it's an open space that they have, so when you go and sign up, come about 15 minutes early, you'll sign up, get your t-shirt, you get a little lunch along with that, and they'll give you a ticket for that lunch. You can come back and eat it at your leisure. We will be passing around the list again. We have people signed up for our express cards, which are $20, and it's kind of a fun duty. Also, we have set up Friday morning, if anybody's interested, tear down on Monday evening at 6, and then again on Tuesday morning at about 7:30. We'll get everything out of there and have it prepared for the people that are picking up the tables and chairs. So that list will be going around. I appreciate everybody's help on that particular item. The last thing is Fine Day will be next week. Remember, those people with birthdays this month, think about your birthday wish. We'll be calling on you and hopefully, again, raising some money as we go through our Fine Day. And should we do Happy News again? Is it? I think that was kind of a nice little tradition we had, too. So those people that have great things happening this month, if you could raise your hand next week, and we'll call on you, and we'll have a little contest to see which news is the best news for the day. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ed. We started this is the first week we will begin our 3-minute Rotarian. And we will call upon one member each week to give us a little background on their personal life, business life, and Rotarian life. Our first 3-minute Rotarian is Max Wendell.
Good morning. Good morning. A little family history. Boring, but it's true. Both of my parents were born in Germany, and they decided after World War I to come to America. And they met up in Detroit, married 1928, and had 3 kids. And I have an older brother, younger sister, and then there's Max in the middle. There's something about them having, that category, a middle child, I think. Anyway, so I was born in 1934, and I acquired a talent for art. In high school, I transferred to Cass Tech in Detroit, majoring in commercial art. After Cass Tech, I had a job as a graphic artist for a year. And then I quit and acquired a degree at Michigan State. And then after that, hooked up with General Motors and traveled the country with the Motoramas. I don't know if you're familiar with that traveling auto show around here. They had the Firebird 3 as the star of the show, and that was a space-age car. It looked like a jet plane without wings. And I did that for a year, and great trip. GM paid for everything. And then I transferred to the Oldsmobile division in Lansing, and they in turn moved me to Cleveland, to the zone office in the Terminal Tower. And then in Cleveland, I met my future wife. In 1963, we were married. We moved to Canton and stayed there for 6 years. And then we moved back north, ended up in Hudson, and bought our first home on East Case. And that was in 1969. In 1988, we moved to Manor Drive, and that's where I live today. So 13 years ago, Dan Rich asked me if I would like to attend a Rotary meeting, a breakfast meeting, and I said, well, yeah, I knew nothing about Rotary, but he mentioned it was a free breakfast. I said, okay, Dan, I'll do it. And that was 13 years ago. So today, 13 years has gone by, and I know a lot more about Rotary, and breakfast is no longer free. So, thank you very much.
Okay, thanks, Max. Now, next week, our 3-minute Rotarian is Bob Krampf, and the week after that, it will be, I'll draw this name out of the hat, Stu Murray. You going to be here, Stu? Okay, good. How about Rich Warfield? We have some badges to present, so I'd like to call upon our membership chair, Rich Warfield.
First of all, I couldn't do it without my co-chair, Evan McCauley. We're a team.
Thanks, Rich.
Father, son. Older brother, younger brother. Well, I won't step into Lee's shoes. I shouldn't say father, son. But anyway, we have 3 Rotarians that will be receiving their big boy badges today. No big girls, just big boys today. Used to say blue badges. Now they're kind of gold. So, first of all, to my right, Evan McCauley has accomplished all the items needed in order to step up to the plate and receive his big boy badge. Evan, I'd like to congratulate you on becoming an official. Let me remove that. Oh, hey. You can put that one back. And there you go.
Thank you.
They've already said enough, right? They don't need to talk again. All right. Would you like to, co-chair, would you like to call the next one up?
Yeah, absolutely. Peter Goheen, could you come up here? Peter has also completed all the tasks necessary to get this gold badge, and he's gone well above them, actually. So thanks a lot, Peter.
Thank you.
There you go. And John Hairston, come on up. John has also completed all of the tasks necessary to get the gold badge, and we're happy to have him here.
Thank you.
So I'm sure those Rotarians are honored to get their coveted gold badges. You know, a couple weeks ago, Evan gave a little bit of history about the Rotary Club. He talked specifically about Paul Harris. You learned that Paul Harris was the founder of the first Rotary Club in the Chicago suburbs in 1905. And then Paul Harris became the president of Rotary International. In those 5 years, Rotary expanded, became the president of Rotary International. And since that time, the Rotary Foundation has honored Paul Harris with a number of recognition awards. And today I've asked President-elect Dave Basil, who is also our liaison to the Rotary Foundation. President-elect Dave will give us a little bit of an update on the Rotary Foundation and the recognition awards, specifically the Paul Harris Award. Dave?
Thanks, President Joe. Good morning, fellow Rotarians. Good morning. I put on each of your tables a little fact booklet about Rotary International's foundation. For those of you who might be interested, a little bit of background. The Rotary International Foundation was started in 1917 by then Rotary International President Arch Klumpf. It's the charitable arm of the Rotary International, and its efforts are really focused in 6 primary areas: promoting peace, fighting disease, providing clean water, saving mothers and children, supporting education, and growing local economies. Perhaps for most of us, the best known of their efforts is the polio eradication. That's a real focus for Rotary International's foundation. The foundation accepts and reviews applications from Rotarians who are creating their own projects. And as you might recall, we submitted through our club a few years ago a project for clean water wells in Africa for the Ubumi orphanage. District grants are usually made to fund smaller, shorter-term projects, and global initiatives are focused on longer-term measures that are sustainable and measurable in their focus. The Rotary International Foundation has a couple of things that they do to try and promote giving and support for their efforts. The first is what I'm certain everybody knows as the Every Rotarian Every Year. And that is a program whereby they encourage each Rotarian to contribute to the Rotary International Foundation on an annual basis. They typically encourage, but they don't require $25 in addition to club annual dues, or quarterly dues, excuse me. But again, that's not required. And an Every Rotarian Every Year member is any member who contributes any amount to the Rotary International Foundation each year on an annual basis. Members who contribute $100 in the course of a year to the Rotary International Annual Fund are recognized as sustaining members. And as a sustaining member, easy for me to say, you receive a sticker for your badge. Participation is tracked for each club by Rotary International, and it's really, they have a fantastic piece on the Rotary International website. So if you go to myrotary.org, you can look at all sorts of information on the International Foundation, their efforts, what they have coming down the road, what their goals and vision for the foundation are. The Rotary Club of Hudson, our club, for the 2014-2015 year, which is the last year for which reports are currently available, has 23 members in the Every Rotarian Every Year category, and we have 13 members who are recognized as sustaining members of Every Rotarian Every Year. A Paul Harris Fellow is a member who contributes $1,000 to the Rotary International Foundation, or in whose name $1,000 is contributed to the annual fund for the Rotary International Foundation or other approved programs. It's available only for individuals. Organizations are not recognized as Paul Harris Fellows. And recognition as a Paul Harris Fellow is achieved with personal contributions. It can also be contributed by the transfer of foundation recognition points by a Rotary Club, a district, or another individual. So to the extent that a club or district has Rotary recognition points, they can contribute those in the name of an individual member toward achieving Paul Harris status. Beginning in October 2011, that contribution was on a one-to-one match basis. The annual fund contributions are cumulative over time, so it's not, an annual reset. You contribute $100 this year and $100 next year, you have $200 toward your Paul Harris Fellowship status. And a 100% Paul Harris club is any club all of whose members are Paul Harris Fellows. It's a one-time recognition for the club, and that the club receives a certificate recognizing that. A benefactor is anyone, and this is one thing that all of us as Rotarians may very well want to consider. A benefactor is anyone who informs the Rotary International Foundation in writing that they have made a provision for the Rotary International Foundation in their will or estate plan. It's a great way, in my opinion, to leave a bequest and make a very, very significant impact. And that's or benefactor is also anyone who makes an outright gift of $1,000 to the Foundation's endowment fund. So that's a little bit on the Paul Harris and the Every Rotarian Every Year. We have a number of Paul Harris Fellows in our club. When you look down the list, it's really pretty amazing. So what I would like the privilege to do is to recognize our Paul Harris Fellows, and as I read your name, if you would stand so that we can all recognize and appreciate your efforts, I think it would be very much appropriate. The first is President Joe, Jim Hackney, Art LaFountain. I don't think Art was able to make it today. Stu Murray, Tom Page, Dick Pearsall, Ben Rexroad, and I saw Ben on the way in. Den Rich, I don't think Den can be here today. Larry Santon, George Snyder, Ron Strobel, Phil Tobin, Tom Tobin, like father, like son, Rich Warfield, Bill Wooldridge, Jim Young, and Joe Zapatowski. Gentlemen. Any questions that I can try and answer? Yes, Phil.
The Paul Harris Society used to have an agreement with us here at the club that if all of our members joined, they could contribute so much, and the company or the club would match it. Is that still true? In other words, I think we were allowed to contribute $500, and then the club contributed $500 towards that. Is that still true?
Yes, those are the recognition points.
No, for the becoming a Paul Harris member.
Yeah. The club can use its recognition points in addition to the individual's monetary contribution to reach the Paul Harris
So that's an
status.
encouragement for people to
absolutely.
get into it. Good.
Absolutely.
Help me with the mathematics on this. I'm not good at mathematics. 1.4 million members of the Paul Harris Society times $1,000. Is that correct?
That would be minimum.
What does that amount to? It's over $1 billion, I would imagine.
Yes. Yeah.
Huge.
It is. And one other thing that I forgot to mention, as you continue to contribute after you reach the initial Paul Harris Fellowship membership level of $1,000, each $1,000 puts you in another level. They actually have 9 recognition levels. So when you go on the website, you'll see Paul Harris +1, +2, and that indicates how many multiples of $1,000 that individual over time has contributed to the Rotary International Foundation. Okay, thanks everybody.
Thank you, Dave. Okay, let's move into our program for today. Jim, if you could introduce Leslie.
Thank you.
Now, I bet before coming here today, I would never have guessed that Evan McCauley would be someone that carried a handkerchief. It's sort of a generational thing. He has one in here, this pocket, but probably not the one back here. Our topic today is communication. And as typical, it's good to share what's the importance of a topic like communication. Well, in today's world, I mean, when you look at all the ways people communicate, there is multiple ways. But I can tell you, we do 2 to 4 practice interviews every month in Hudson Job Search. And try to ask someone to say, tell me what you want to do. What position are you looking for? And do it in 30 to 45 seconds. Most of them can't do it. And then if you have everybody, the listeners, take a test, some of them can't explain back exactly what they're looking for. So you've totally failed your ability to network well. Well, Leslie Unger comes here. She has spoken to Hudson Job Search many times. And she also has spoken to, and she's one tough lady, because she came and drove to Clyde, Ohio, early in the morning to speak to our advisors, and she was sick. And she came anyway, so we appreciate that. And she had a broken foot. So, she's president of Electric Impulse Communications. She helps individuals and corporations supercharge their leadership performance. She serves as adjunct faculty at the University of Akron, and her undergraduate degree and master's degree are both in communications and rhetoric. She hosts a PBS television show called Forum 360. She writes a monthly column for a magazine called Affluent and is often interviewed and quoted frequently in regional and national media. She's a member of the National Speakers Association, and maybe she can share more of this story, but in 6th grade she wrote a play about Custer and had parts for not only Custer but the horse as well. She's imbued with the belief that words can change the world. And even as a graduate student, she wrote to every president candidate to talk about how they can improve their communication. That's gutsy too, tough and gutsy. Welcome, Leslie. It's all yours.
Can anyone tell me the name, well, before the name, can anyone tell me the only thing that lived through Custer's last stand on the American side? The horse. Custer's horse. And who, for a very fine prize, who can tell me the name of Custer's horse? You're a group of smart Rotarians. Does anyone know the name? Oh, he was lucky. He was lucky. His name was Cochise. Yes. And the Army did make sure that he had a long and healthy retirement as the only thing that lived through Custer's last stand. Remind me at the end, if I have time, I will tell you why I wrote about Custer's last stand in 6th grade. Joe, I just wanted to ask you, do you still want me to be over at 8:20? Okay, I will do that for you. A few weeks ago, they came to Cleveland, they saw, and a few of them conquered. Next July, one will come back. One will come, one will see, and one will conquer the Republican nomination for President of the United States. Now, I contend that those people that came for the debate a few weeks ago, and whomever comes back for the nomination, will do so because they implemented effectively my 7 absurdly simple steps to communicate your value. Now, when Joe first asked me, and thank you for the invitation to speak to you all this morning, when Joe first asked me to speak, and I emailed him my topic, 7 absurdly simple steps to communicate your value, he said, well, you know, that's probably a good topic because it's early in the morning and we need something simple. You know, we're not really awake yet. They are simple, but they are not easy. Simple, but not easy, which is why I'd like to think I am an expert. And why at Electric Impulse? I named my business after a horse. So in case you wonder why I sound like an electric company, I had an Arabian that I showed for many years, Electric Impulse, and at the time I thought it was a good idea to name my business after a horse. And I do say some weeks I get more calls as an electric company that I'm not than I do for speaking, for coaching, or speech writing. I have on the tables the 7 tips I'm going to quickly go over, and I'm going to very quickly go over them if you want to take them with you. We also do a lot of events because those 7 tips are not easy to implement. So we have some events where you may come and we help you implement them, and so you'll see a schedule for that. I've asked for some help today, and I'm going to reward you very quickly. I have pieces of candy. I'm going to reward you for participation. You can get more than 1 piece of candy and add them up, and you will get a very, very, very fine gift, okay? So I'm going to ask for help. I have given 7 envelopes to you Rotarians throughout. 7 absurdly simple but not easy tips to effectively communicate your value. It's your job to communicate your value. It's not anyone else's job to try to figure it out. Tip number 1. Who has my first tip? My first envelope, number 1. Number 1. And it says what?
It is.
What does it say?
Identify, communicate, protect your value.
Okay, identify, communicate, and protect your value. You know, several years ago, probably about 10 years ago, I was asked to speak to graduating seniors at Hudson High School. I was very honored, although I went to Revere. We always were kind of considered the 2 best high schools, you know, in Summit County. So I was very honored to be asked to speak. And I made the mistake, I asked a graduating class of seniors in Hudson. I asked, how many of you are going to be a salesperson when you grow up? And not only did no one raise their hand, they didn't breathe, they didn't bat an eyelash, they didn't nod. It was as if they were taught. If some lady ever asks you if you're going to be a salesperson, don't answer, don't breathe, don't blink, don't anything. Well, in my world of communication, everyone is a salesperson. If you're a CPA, you can't save someone money every April 15th if you don't have a client. I was telling the table I was sitting at, I have a client who's a pediatric orthopedic surgeon. I guarantee you I am not advising him on surgery. But he needs patients, and patients, guests, members, clients, customers, they're all the same thing. And in order to get them, you have to be able to correctly identify your value. What is the value that you as an individual or you as a company bring to the world? And most people and most companies have incorrectly identified their value. The bank that you can bank in person at from, do we have any bankers here? 1, 2, okay. I can only insult 2 people by 8:30 a.m. this morning. The bank that says we have convenient hours, I want to know 9 to 4 whom that is convenient for. Because 8 to 6, it's not convenient to me. Now 8 to 6, getting there, okay? So you don't decide your value, your market decides your value. You have to correctly identify it. You have to learn how to communicate it verbally. As Jim talked about, I have a walk across the room exercise where I make people walk across my office and answer, why should I hire you? What is your value? What do you bring, Mr. CEO? How is the world going to be different? Your company going to be different? And I have to tell you, this is a difficult exercise for anyone. But you have to practice it out loud. Practicing it to yourself doesn't count. You have to be able to verbally talk about your value. You have to be able to do it in emails, in writing, on Twitter, in Facebook. And you have to be able to take steps to protect your value. Now, we all know that someone coming to an interview in a halter top is protecting their value. But there's the other side of that where Akron, you may have heard about, has really been in the news lately. You know, we've had quite the mayor fiasco. It just is like a gift that just does not stop giving. But I was at a debate the other night between 3 candidates that are running for mayor, and one of them, I would say they're all in their 50s, but one of them walks like he's 105. That's not protecting your value. So it's in all ways identify, communicate, and protect your value. Number 2. Who has my number 2 tip?
Identify, I'm sorry.
Number 2.
Match your V's, verbal, vocal, visual.
Match your V's, verbal, vocal, visual. 4. A handful of candy. Which one, verbal, vocal, visual, which one is most important to your audience? Oh, listen to this woman. She's really, really smart. She's really, really smart, okay? The visual is most important. I guarantee you, standing here today, that in that rodeo called the Republican nomination, whomever wins that, it will be the person who can most effectively communicate the visual of what we want a president to look like. Because the visual beats verbal and vocal. Who has tip number 3? Yes?
Know the spokes on the communication wheel.
Know the spokes on the communication wheel. You know, my clients range from age 15 to a CEO who's been CEO for a few decades. The reason is there's always some spoke on your communication wheel that you need to improve. So what is a spoke? What is one area of communication? Eye contact, okay? Excellent, eye contact. What's another one? Written, absolutely, pass it over. What's another one? Body language. Yes. Now, also you've got formal speaking, you've got impromptu speaking, you have leading a meeting, you have participating at a meeting. You have a radio interview, you have one-on-one, you have large group, you have small group. Those are all different spokes. It's our job to be prepared in every single one of them. As I mentioned, you know, our mayor in Akron kind of resigned after like 100 years with like a 3-week notice. So the candidates really didn't have a lot of time to prepare. But in my world, it's your job to always prepare for every opportunity in the world of communication because you don't know when you're going to get that opportunity. It's your job to be ready. The next tip, tip number 4.
Oh, you have multiple audiences.
You have multiple audiences. What do I mean by you have multiple audiences?
Gender, age.
Is that number 5? Did I skip 4? I'm so confused. I don't believe you guys. I'm using my own note. Who would have thought you can't believe a Rotarian? Okay. Number 4. Multiple audiences. Okay, multiple audiences. First impressions. But what other audience do I have besides all of you here today? Okay, I have the video. That's another one. And what else? I don't want to hit someone, so be careful, okay? What else? What's another audience today that I have?
Word of mouth audience.
Word of mouth. You're going to go home and you're going to tell someone today that you heard the best speaker you ever heard in your life. So that's multiple audiences. It's not just the audience that we see in front of us. The next tip, tip number 5. Who has tip number 5?
5, but it's 6 on your list.
Okay, 5. Just read what you have.
Treat your presentation as a gift.
Treat your presentation as a gift. If you thought of your presentation, well, let me back up one moment. I have a client that spoke Friday night at an event, a company that made an event and invited 500 people, and the managing partner spoke. I'm going to say it probably started almost a year in advance where they had to pick the venue. They had to do all that work. They had to pick which 500 people they were inviting. There's a lot of work that goes into any event. The day before the event, he thought, oh, maybe I should speak since I'm managing partner. Really? And then it was the infamous, it's only a couple minutes, so I don't have to prepare. And that's why you ended up talking about your mother, and we still have no idea to this day on Wednesday what you were talking about. Your gift, your presentation is a gift that you give your audience. And just as, and I'm just going to speak to the men here today, okay? Men, your wives would appreciate any gift, and you know that. But if you actually go to the effort of putting it in a gift bag, do you get a few extra points? And what is even better than putting it in a gift bag?
Wrapping it.
If you wrap it, and if you add to the wrapping a card and a bow, it's a, and if that box happens to be blue from Tiffany's, okay, your presentation needs to be a gift. And the way that you wrap a gift in the communication world with a bow is that your introduction and your conclusion need to tie together. The next tip, number 6. Who's got my number 6? The one in your card.
Make friends with the devil in the details.
Make friends with the devil in detail. Which means it's the little things. If you think about a bucket of water, I never understood that if there was a leaky faucet, like, so what? Like, really? Like, so what? Do I really have to call the plumber? But if you put a bucket under that spigot, it's amazing how the next morning it is filled with water. It's the same thing with communication. I don't have a magic wand that really works, although I do have a magic wand at my office, and all of you are welcome. Come to my office. I usually have cupcake and coffee for anyone. I do have a magic wand. It doesn't really work. It is not one thing that you do differently. It is 100 things that the nominee for the Democratic or the Republican nomination will do effectively. It's 100 different things. Can you hear me? Is a sentence I ban my clients from ever saying. In fact, my little managing partner who didn't prepare well, I saw him after the speech and he said, as soon as the words came out, can you hear me? I said to myself, Leslie's going to kill me. Okay? Can you hear me gives away your power. That's it. That's a detail I forbid my clients from saying. I don't make this stuff up. I actually hear people end a prepared gift that they are giving their audience by saying, that's it, as if they just ran out of energy or air. On a PowerPoint, have you ever heard someone say, I know you can't read this, but. My dog, Tim, who at the end of his life was blind and deaf, would ask, if you know I can't read this, then why did you put it up there? It's the details. It's 100 different details. And it's very hard for you to be an honest mirror on yourself. That's why in my office, should you ever come visit me for a cupcake and a coffee, I have 2 full-length mirrors, because coaching is an honest mirror. And it's 100 details that you have to be honest about how effectively you are doing to identify, communicate, and protect your value. Number 7. Who has my number 7 tip?
Questions are your best friend.
Questions are your best friend. I'm a dog person. I'm an animal person because, remember, I did name my business after a horse. Thank you. But I'm a huge dog person. If I do make it to the Hudson Lake Festival this weekend, it will be with my dog. Nacha will be with me. But in communication, it's not dogs that are your best friend. It's questions. And I'm not talking about when you are speaking. I'm talking about in your everyday life. You know, one of the, hopefully, advantages to being over the age of 25, although I do have to tell you very quickly, 2 years ago, I took Jim Tressel's class on coaching at the University of Akron. My dad was a water boy for the Ohio State football team before World War II, and I always had a very intimate relationship with Ohio State football. I have a tortured relationship with Jim Tressel, but I have a long relationship with Ohio State. So I take this class, and I sit in the front, and there's about 80 people, most people taking it for credit. I'm not taking it for credit. And I'm sitting in the front, and we have a different guest coach every week, and I ask a question every single week. I ask a question of our guest coach. I ask a question of Jim Tressel. About halfway through, I raise my hand one night. He looks over at me, and he says, does anyone under the age of 25 have a question? Excuse me? I said, how do you know? I'm not under 25. And he looked out at me over his little wire rims, and that's when you always knew you were in trouble, when Jim Tressel looks out over his wire rims, and he said, you are, aren't you? Well, what could I say? Yes, I am. So one of the advantages of being over the age of 25 is that we have acquired some expertise and experience along the way. The only way it's really a bad deal to be over 25 is if you didn't gather any experience and expertise. So you want to tell everyone your experience and the expertise you've gathered. Questions are your best friend. From a communication standpoint, if you can say the same thing in a question rather than a statement, because if you picture a stoplight, questions are a green. They say communication go, conversation go. If you make statements, that's the worst tie I've ever seen. That's like a big red light. What am I supposed to say to that? So questions, whether it's with your grandchildren, whether it's with your spouse, whether it's with your dog, don't you say, do you want to go out? We say that to our dog, right? Don't you want to go out? But yet to people, we make statements. So if you want to be more effective, if you want to identify, communicate, or protect your value, ask questions rather than make statements. When I started out, I said, they came, they saw, and some of them conquered. They will come back in July, and one of them will have conquered. My contention is that the candidates who succeed will be the ones that implement the 7 absurdly simple but not easy steps to communicate your value. Identify, communicate, and protect your value. Remember that the devil is in those details, so when you think it won't matter, it's just a couple-minute remark. I don't have to prepare. The devil is in the details. Questions are your best friend. You have multiple audiences and many spokes on your communication wheel. The verbal, the vocal, the visual, and visual wins. It has been my pleasure. Since I kind of had to accelerate this to get this done, I'm going to give away a very valuable prize by asking someone to raise their hand and answer. Let me call on you. What was the name of Custer's horse? Cochise. Thank you, and I will give you my gift. The reason I did a play, and I said that Custer's Last Stand was an example of bad communication. It wasn't. I made my best friend get down on her hands and knees, and I put a saddle on her back, and I made her be Cochise. What a surprise. I haven't spoken to her in years, okay? But the reason I wrote this play is I thought that it was an example of poor communication. As I got older, I learned was really arrogance on Custer's side, not bad communication. But I ask all of you to look at a detail, a step, a 7-step, so that you don't have your last stand. I thank you very, very much.
Thank you, Leslie. And indeed, it's not only cupcakes and coffee, but there's candy as well at Leslie's office. Let's hear from George about our upcoming speakers for the month.
Thank you, Joe. Morning, Rotarians. The remainder of September is going to be Healthcare Month, and we have 4 very high-powered speakers. Next week, September the 9th, we will have Kristen Morris. Kristen is the Chief Government and Community Relations Officer for the Cleveland Clinic, and she's going to talk about the many ways in which the clinic tries to involve the community in better health care. On the 16th, we will have from University Hospitals, Patricia DePompe, who is the president of UH Rainbow Babies and Children's Hospital, and also president of McDonald Women's Hospitals. The following week, the 23rd, we will have a man who not only is known as the president of Akron Children's Hospital, but also Mr. Akron, that is Bill Considine. He will be here to talk about the future of pediatric care. And last but not least, on September 30th, we will have a Hudson resident, Dr. Deborah Plate, who is with the Akron General Medical Center. as a physician and a broadcast personality, and we'll be delighted to hear what she has to say about changing government regulations as they affect healthcare. So a great month, good speakers. I hope you will all attend.
Thank you, George. So a question, do you know anyone that may be interested in hearing one of these speakers? If I do, next week. So if so, invite them to one of our meetings in September. As a wrap-up, there's a club board meeting next week. I'd like to thank our greeters, Ed Sogan and Roseanne Drake, our AV crew, Tom Page, Jeff Tong, James Field, John Hairston, Ron Barnhouse, and from Service Learning, Bella Morella. So let's have our drawing for our Rotobuck.
Joe, if someone is here when Dr. Deb Plate speaks, if you've noticed on my handouts that I gave you with events that are coming up at Electric Impulse, one of them says Horse Talk, Lessons in Leadership. It's a day where horses teach you about your own leadership and communication skills. Well, Dr. Deb Plate did that event. So if you're here, and she takes questions, I'd love to see someone ask her, tell us about that Horse Talk thing that you did a few years ago, okay? Because she was there.
Now, the Rotobuck drawing for today is $21, and the jackpot, $694. The winning number is, the last four digits, 3415.
Got it.
And there are about 30 marbles left, about 29 marbles left. Have a great day.